Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry, where today we are looking at the next Japanese battlecruiser. Well, calling it a battlecruiser is actually not doing it justice. And this at tier 9 is the Adatara, a ship that did not exist, although the plans for it sort of did. So as part of the 8.8 program, Japan was rather busy trying to match the Americans in battleship building, which was a bit of a problem for them, given that they did not have the economy to back this up. But the Japanese plans had the Amagis, and then as a follow-up, the key class of battlecruisers, fast battleships. The Japanese at this point actually were ahead of the curve a little bit and started merging the ideas of battlecruisers and fast battleships. And as a follow-on on the keys, they were planning a set of 4 battleships or fast battleships that didn't even get a name or a class name. They were just named number 13 to 16. These ships were basically super keys with massive new engines, with sort of okay armor, and they were supposed to be holding 460mm or 18.1-inch guns, similar to what we would eventually be finding on the Yamato. Now, all of these plans were eventually dropped because of the Washington Naval Treaty, which put a very, very sudden stop to all kinds of construction for 10 years. And as such, these ships were never even named or laid down. And given that the guns were in development while the conference was ongoing, it never became more than a paper gun. But had the ships actually been built, they would have been pretty much what we're seeing here. This is a fast battleship with four 18-inch guns in tier 9. Now, in tier 9, she has to compete, and I'm using that term very, very broadly. She has to compete with the Izumo, which is not it is not a particularly high bar, let's put it that way. If the only requirement is to be better than the Izumo, then this is not much of an achievement, really. But let's take a look on how the two compare. Izumo obviously having the precise aim skill. This is the precise aim 2, which gives us 35% better dispersion for 20 seconds. The Adatara gets the sort of hybrid scout plane. So she gets a 10% range, but only 10% dispersion for 25 seconds. So not quite as good as the precise aim, but in return you get the 10% range increase. She also gets a defensive AA, which is quite nice. Now, nobody's going to be accusing the Izumo of being particularly well armored. The Adatara is less armored than that, so you're basically having the armor of an Alaska here at this point, which means these ships are very much unsuited towards taking any kind of fire, which makes sense with the whole range setup. And she is a bit more maneuverable, but the guns is where it gets annoying. Because for some reason, these are 457mm guns. No, Wargaming. Japan did not build 457mm guns. So if this was a complete fantasy ship, okay, but this isn't. This was an existing design, and it had 460mm on them, not 457. So what gives? That aside, the guns are pretty much better in all regards, except for the high explosive damage. And except for the fire chance on them, and they have a rather weird citadel damage factor, again with 275%. Usually for this caliber this should have been 300%, and we do have 457mm guns in the game, not just in the Japanese tree because they don't belong there. But I'm not sure where the 25% citadel damage went, but it seems to be a little balancing factor. If we're looking at the secondaries, that's where the difference between the Izumo, which is a much later design, and the Adatara, which was basically based on a First World War design, comes into play, because she gets the traditional 140mm casemate, so the sort of stuff you find at around tier 6 and 7 in the Fuso and Nagato. These aren't bad. The reload is reasonably fast, but and you get a reasonable number of them. The thing is, if you find yourself using the secondaries, you have either been rushed by a destroyer or things have gone horribly wrong. Now that said, slight spoiler alert, of course you will find me well within secondary range in the games that we're about to play, but that's not how it's meant to work. The 100mm auto secondaries are probably there as dual purpose guns in the sense that they're there to justify the AA, because by themselves, again, they're not great. They reload reasonably quickly, but other than that, they're really not much to look at. The AA, however, isn't actually that bad, with even the small caliber AA having a relatively good range of 2.1 kilometers, and the values, if you have the defensive AA up, being pretty decent. That still doesn't mean that she can defeat a whole incoming carrier airstrike by herself, but she can do a fair amount. She can shoot a fair amount of planes down at least. And the surface detection for a ship that size isn't actually that bad. Now we do have a ship in tier 9 with 460mm guns. That's the Musashi, the Yamato sister ship that for some reason has been down tiered to tier 9. And here, if we look at the guns, you see how it's supposed to look like. So these were supposed to be 460mm, 50 caliber length guns, 50 a type, that is correct. Just the Musashi gets the proper citadel damage, and yes, the guns actually do more damage here as well. So that's sort of what we were expecting. And I think 8 guns wouldn't quite have been gone amiss if they had just been similar. Now, the other thing that really, really irritates me about these guns, before we start looking at the setup, is these are 50 caliber length guns. They should be having a relatively high shell velocity, and they should be relatively precise, hopefully. Again, spoiler alert, they are not. In fact, these guns are so imprecise, they make German guns look good. You'll see examples of that, but if you've seen Space Walls, then you kind of know the sort of nonsense that I'm talking about. I am surrounded by a-holes. Somehow they manage to, with a twin turret that has a couple of meters between the guns, somehow they manage to get the shells landing, straddling an enemy battleship on the sides at point blank range. Yeah, these guns are hilariously inaccurate. So that's a bit of a bummer, but let's look at the setup then. We have obviously only one choice here, because why on earth would you want torpedo damage reduction on a ship that has no torpedo damage reduction to begin with? She does get main battery reload and traverse, which is good. So at least we can fire these guns reasonably quickly. And if we are looking at the camouflage, it's your typical battleship camo, except it isn't, because instead of the usually useless torpedo damage reduction, we actually get max traverse speed for a bit more agility. These things maneuver reasonably well, which is a big saving grace actually for them. And the range is really, really good as well, especially if you've got the scout plane up. You do have an alternative camo. It's the help, there's a giant dragon stuck in my bow. Do something, camo. And yes, besides being visually challenged, she also brings very, very strange bonuses with it. Why wouldn't you want to have secondary range and secondary dispersion? This is not a brawler. This is the opposite of a brawler. This is a ship that very much does not want to be in close proximity to anybody, except for in the later stage of the battle or if the situation arises. But in most cases, what you want to do is you want to be an artillery ship. You want to sit back, use your range, try not to get shot at, preserve your hit points for the end of the game, and that's when you're trying to, well, maybe get up close and personal, finish something off. But honestly, I find that a really strange combination, and I would argue that this is definitely the inferior camouflage, despite the whole, well, optical part here. What else do we need to look at? Equipment. Not a great selection here. Given that the dispersion really is bad, you probably want the main battery mod 3 to do what you can to fix it. And given that this is technically a battle cruiser and also an artillery ship, sailing with the concealment mod is actually not a bad idea. Well, it isn't in general, but in this case specifically it's not a bad idea, because that means you can potentially go undetected if you start drawing fire just by virtue of usually being far away from everything. Now, I am using Yamamoto here for the second round, and there is obviously the difference of the question of the air defense expert, which you're not going to be taking on Yamamoto because, well, Yamamoto has the 6th sense skill, which is A, legendary, and B, very, very useful because it tells you when you're being targeted, when you're being locked on, to be more precise. And as such, for something that does not enjoy being shot at, is very, very good. However, we're also not using the marksman skill, because while that is legendary and very, very good, it is used for the precise aiming skill, which we don't have on this ship. So Yamamoto isn't actually the best choice necessarily here, but the fact that we don't need the precise aim means we can use the survivalist fully prepared setup for maximum hit point recovery. And apart from that, it's not really a great, no really great surprises here. We've got the APCS Plus, obviously, at 11, and the Citadel Strike Plus in 12. And then when it comes to talents, I'm using the green tree, so we get 35 main battery hits for better traverse. Once we cause 35% of our own HP in damage, we get 2% Citadel damage, which is nice. Not earth-shaking or world-changing. And once we manage 5 Citadel strikes, we get significantly improved things. However, for 5 Citadel strikes, you sort of have to be a bit lucky with what you're shooting at, because good luck trying to hit anything but enemy battleships that are sitting still at long range with these guns. First game obviously is going to be a regular round, and I think we'll take a very quick detour and look at the battle honors, because that's not something I usually do. You can just look it up. There's not an awful lot I can tell you about it, but let's have a quick look. 20 battles obviously is easy. 1.8 million total damage, easy. That's just grind. 50 cruisers. That's a bit of more of an interesting one, because it requires cruisers to, well, to assist in a manner of speaking, because any cruiser player worth their salt, if they see something with 18-inch guns pointing at them, then they will be sailing in the other direction very quickly. And like I said, good luck actually hitting cruisers at range with this thing. But eventually you'll get there. 90 enemy ships, yeah, again, just a matter of grinding, and 100,000 points of damage in a battle. That is absolutely doable. That is doable in tier 7. So no problem at all, and that nets you 2 steel. Since we're talking about resources, actually just a very quick announcement, something I'll be planning and I'll be working on this week, or this coming week, is to revisit the ships that are in the shipyard. So I'll try to do this in the when the rotations are coming up, just to give you a bit of an updated pointer as to what these ships can do and cannot do, and to make it to give a bit of a guide there in that regard. Anyway, enough talking. Let's have a look at 2 rounds in the Adatara. The tier 9, thank God it's not the Izumo. In the first round, with the less whaley setup, we are top tier in a carrier battle against Indomitable Gascoigne. This is an older recording, as you can tell by the fact that this is, I think, pre 7.4, because the enemy ship list isn't completely jumbled. Against Indomitable, Gascoigne, Atlantico, an Iwami, Harbin, and a Xianyang, and we're playing a base capture on Aurora. We have an Indomitable of our own, and Aurora does not provide you with an awful lot of cover generally when it comes to these things. So what you really need to abuse here for the first half at least, or first 2/3 of the battle, is your range, because your armor is terrible, and you will need to trade hit points in the late game if you need to get up close and personal with enemy ships in order to do something. So for the beginning of the game, you usually want to head back. Now, I have a Musashi and friendly Indomitable there, and unfortunately the Destroyer is a bot. So usually I would run a flank, but in this case I'll stick with the friendly ships to a degree, because if you look at the range indicator, and that is without the scout plane up, I have 3 scout planes that would allow me to increase the range by 10%. I can already reach the enemy capture circle. So once the carrier has actually spotted anything, which I have absolutely no idea what just happened there, but the Indomitable dive bombers just vanished and have not spotted anything, which is probably a bug of some sorts. So now here we're talking. There comes the Gascoigne, and there is a bot Jutland, but we have a Gascoigne to shoot at, so we can inch a little bit more forward, and then we can start unloading at the ship. Now I am raising the scout plane here not for range extension, but for the just for the precision, because I do want to get the guns on target, and you can comfortably get 2 salvos off without trouble. Now the Harbin is moving, and what did I say about moving cruisers? You never hit them, so the Gascoigne is backing off, being rushed by the bot. Don't worry, Gascoigne, the bot is not going to torpedo you, and Gascoigne isn't even shooting at the bot. He's shooting at me instead. So far, I am drawing the better shots here, and we've done an okay 15,000 points of damage against the Gascoigne with 2 salvos, who is backing behind an island there, and that means I can no longer shoot at him, which is a wise choice. So I'm going to unload at the Iwami instead. And I have no idea where the friendly lightning is going, but there we go. Nice, that's the first citadel hit. And the Harbin is sort of sitting there behind an island. I need to get into a better position now, but I don't want to get any closer. I just want to get in a better position and see if I can get shots off at the Gascoigne, maybe behind the island there. Do notice the relatively fast reload. And the guns can be very, very accurate if they want to be. And that really, really hurt. So there is the Harbin, relatively... nope, he's not aggressive, he's not coming out. He's staying behind the island, being dropped by the friendly Indomitable, which... yeah, he can do that, but he doesn't seem to be making great strides there. So again, positioning-wise, I'm keeping my distance, and we might try to see if we can sneak a shot into the Harbin, if we are lucky. And he doesn't turn. No, of course he turns, and we only end up with 1 over-penetration. We are leading by 2 kills, and it'll be... I think I'll need to push a little bit here, because right now I don't really have anything to shoot at, which brings me in potentially torpedo range of the Harbin. But the enemy battleships are behind the islands, and the Harbin isn't paying attention. So we're going to use the secondaries. I'm holding off with the main guns because I want him to turn. And that's a dead Harbin. And poof, there he goes. Okay, I don't think he got torpedoes away. He just realized that he was in trouble, smoked up, but it was way too late. And yeah, you do not do this with battleships. Okay, and that has reduced the enemy team to 3 ships. And I think the battle is pretty much won at this point. So we can now again use the scout plane for range extension. We have spotted the Indomitable, which means I'm actually a little late on the shot because I've just moved around. So I don't know if I can still get the extension on the second salvo. And that was a good one. So with the precision scout plane precision up, the guns actually work really, really nicely. And now we are within regular range of the Indomitable, so let's get the forward turrets out and then try to turn slightly and see if we can get the rear turrets on target as well. And that just leaves the Atlantico and the Indomitable, and there we go. That's another couple of hits. And that is pretty much game at this point. So we haven't done an awful lot, but this is sort of the positioning that you need to play. Hang back, trade long-range fire, and do a lot of damage to enemy battleships at range and carriers if you can catch them. That is. So that's really how you have to play this. And while we're watching me blind fire the Indomitable and bouncing 18-inch shells off it, because of course we are. Okay, where are you, Indomitable? Hey, you may as well show yourself. You've lost anyway. Still trying to farm some damage, which is legit, but We'll wait until the friendly carrier gets around. There he is. Okay, now let's finish that thing off. I think he is almost stationary, so scout plane up again. This is for precision, not for range, because I don't need the range. But fully broadsiding carrier, even these guns can't miss it. And with a very satisfying ending there, it was a casual 82,000 points of damage, which isn't bad, honestly. Now, to be fair, if you were playing in an Izumo, you'd be playing in a similar manner, because the guns on the Izumo actually are, with the precise aiming, able to get on target reasonably well. But the guns on the Adatara hit quite hard, and or can hit quite hard if you get them on target. Which brings us to the second round, and this is a later game. As you can see, this is post-patch, because the ship lists are all jumbled up. Now, on this game, I am going to... I was thinking if I was going to feature this game on its own or as part of the ship review, and I in the end decided to feature it as part of the ship review. The reason for that is the end of the game, and it could, if I was to copy Jingles, this would be a Game of Throws. I'm just going to ask you to look kindly upon the player at the end who throws the game, because we all make mistakes, and I can certainly sympathize with the way that the game was thrown, but it is quite hilarious in its own way. So let's all have a good laugh about it, including, if you're watching this, the unfortunate person who ended up doing it. We are playing with the fully decked out Adatara this time, so with APCS Plus, on Domination on Cage, which is a nice map for that, against a Donskoy, a Musashi, a Yolo Emilio, a Sanjang, a Cross of Dorn, Split, and a Richelieu. So again, we are top tier, no tier 10s in this game, and we will see what the Adatara can do against, against planes, really, and against that enemy team. Now, position for you, if you're playing on this map in something like this ship and you're spawning here, definitely C-Cup. That's where you want to be. From there on, you can be artillery, and you can make yourself useful. You definitely do not wish to rush forward into B in this thing. You want to keep your distance and let the smaller, more agile ships do that while you provide long-range gunnery support. The other thing that you can provide in the ship is AA support, because, well, there's an Östergötland which has a relatively decent AA, and there is a, what was it? Oh yeah, there's a Harbin on our side, which also has a relatively decent AA, and there is a Paolo Emilio, which, of course, goes YOLO! And it's not worth breaking stealth for, because I'm not going to hit that thing at this range anyway, so... we know where the carrier is, and there is the Richelieu, and I might have shots at the Musashi over there. I am getting targeted now. That could be the carrier, so let's see. But we got shots out. No, I think it was the Richelieu. So shots out there, and there comes the enemy airstrike. No, it was the carrier. There comes the enemy airstrike. Slow down already. Try to avoid as much as possible the incoming airstrike, and with the defensive AA up, we are actually starting to shoot a fair amount of planes down. So that's 4 planes gone and the 2 strike packages defeated with the overlapping AA. We've got the Musashi fully broadside to shoot at, so precise aim up. Let's get the shots at this thing and see what we can do. Damage-wise, yeah, could have been better, could have been worse. This is sort of where we want to stay positionally. Now the team isn't controlling B, and that is probably because of the crossfire that's being set up, because that Richelieu is in a very annoying position over there, and that sort of prevents our Harbin from pushing into B Cup, because then he's going to get squished between a Musashi and the Richelieu. And he is not in a ship that is potentially capable of that. And the Richelieu is very smart, because he knows that he can point his guns forward. Dealing with a Richelieu usually involves shooting his guns off. That's the way you want to go for it. And there comes the first talent activation, so slightly better turret rotation now. The problem is, with these guns, you can't aim at anything. I mean, you can, but you're not going to hit it. So while I am trying to remove the Richelieu from that really annoying flanking position he's in, I am pushing around myself here because I definitely don't want to push into B-Cap. This is not a ship that you want to push into anything, especially not into a crossfire. And even though the Richelieu is just tier 8 and has 380mm guns, you have cruiser armor or super cruiser armor, so you can't take a beating. Now I can still supply some fire support here, however. So let's get a couple shots out at the cross of dawn, and then generally make my way towards the Richelieu, because also the carrier is somewhere there, and I need to dig that guy out from his flanking position, which he is in. And annoyingly, he's still pointing his nose towards the enemy, which is me in this case. So a couple of shots out, and yeah, mostly some of them hit, some of them miss. There we go, one gun's down. That was more accident than anything, but that's generally what you want to do if you're being faced with a Richelieu. And he's almost in secondary range. Oh, he doesn't seem to be taking me very seriously at this point. So let's keep shooting at him. But unfortunately, the gunnery, as you can see, is just hilariously inaccurate, even at this range. Oh, don't worry, it's gonna get much worse than that. All right, we have spotted the Zanzang, who hasn't been paying attention that I've been flanking around. So I'm hoping that my team is going to be making a push there around the center cups, while I am going to try to take down both the Richelieu and the enemy carrier, because these two are sort of the only things left that's anchoring the enemy team here. And we are a kill ahead, so again they are in a nasty flanking position from which they can do a lot of damage. This is not a bad position for a Richelieu to be in, because that thing has relatively decent AA. So let's get the defensive AA ready. Unfortunately, that is a Sansang, and that's a lot of planes, but much worse, that's a Richelieu, and yes, that's cruiser armor. So Richelieu needs to die, carrier needs to die. Carrier has just got his planes out, but my damage control is on, so the carrier needs to go. Now here comes the main batteries out. You see that? Did you see that? So I am in a brawl with the Richelieu. Again, usually what you try to do is shoot the guns off. What I'm trying to go for here is just DPS and see if I can outturn his guns. Manual aim, just go for the deck and hope for the citadels. Unfortunately, no luck here. So let's get the lock-on back on again and see if we can do something about these guns. But yeah, unfortunately that is not really happening. The Richelieu is not particularly well armored, so I should be able to get through him relatively easily. And yeah, there comes the Citadel. Unfortunately, the Richelieu is returning the favor, and because of whatever he scored, there must have been looked like a double Citadel early on. One more salvo out, and it just one shot somehow missed, and the other one semi-penetrated. And the Richelieu ends up sinking me. But the Richelieu is on super low health. He's the only ship remaining. Now, here's where it gets interesting. The enemy team holds 2 of the capture circles, and they are ahead on points, and they're going to go ahead on points. And it's a minute 20 left, and neither the Pebida nor the cruiser up there are in any kind of position to take the capture circle such that we win on points. The only ship now that can defeat the Richelieu is the Pebida. He has full airstrike complements coming out, and that's probably the last airstrike complements he's going to get out. And the Richelieu is on very low hit points, so all he has to do is kill that Richelieu. And there he is. He's not going to be able to run away. He's on very low HP. So the first strike is a dive bomber strike. Doesn't set a fire. Second dive bomber strike coming in. This does a bit of damage, not setting fire. There are 3 torpedo bomber strikes now coming in, and that should be the end of the Richelieu. Unfortunately, at this point, while the Pebida is setting up the torpedo strikes, well, the Richelieu is a relatively maneuverable battleship, and just turns left. And that, unfortunately, with 16 seconds remaining, means we're going to be losing on points. Now, don't be too hard on that Pebida. I think you know what happened there.
He missed it! Oh no, he's driven round it.
I probably couldn't have done it either if I was in a carrier. I know how difficult this is. And yeah, the Takao had no way of getting there. And now that even though we're capturing this, that Richelieu just won the game. And despite the fact that we managed to get 114,000 points of damage, it just hasn't been enough. Had I been a little bit luckier with my brawl against the Richelieu, or had he been a little bit unluckier with his citadels, we would have probably won this. But yeah, sometimes games turn out like that. I found it hilarious, and yeah, my commiserations to the Pobeda player. So now you see what happens when you're getting into a close range fight, even with a bottom tier battleship in the Adatara. You have cruiser armor, and you can absolutely not sustain this kind of thing. So all in all, is this thing better than the Musashi? Yes, it is. I mean, it's an extremely low bar to begin with. Being worse than the Musashi is going to be an actual feat of engineering to make. And while I'm griping on about the guns and their precisions, they are not that bad, and as long as RNG is on your side, you can definitely have some really good games in the ship, and it's refreshing to have a Japanese tier 9 battleship on the tech tree that isn't terrible. And the next time we're going to be having a look at the tier 10 again, at the Bungo, I believe it was called. And for some reason, I'm always thinking of a former Italian president, but can't quite remember why. Anyway, that's what we'll be looking at next, which is basically the same ship with an extra turret, but we will have to get a feel for the guns and everything else and see how it plays out. But yeah, that's it for today, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.